right. So we are on. Welcome to DojoCast. I'm Sensei Mish, and I have Rory Miller with me today. Before we get into our talk, if you are not already a subscriber, hit the subscribe button, and then and then of course the bell that'll let you know any episodes that I post online. And of course, if you like the episode, hit the like button and comment. You know, if you don't like something that we say, because sometimes we can be offensive because we're older, and or maybe if you totally agree, just say, hey, that was cool. So Rory, how are you?
I'm fine, Mish. I keep looking at you because I have not got the trick of looking at camera like it's a person. I look at it like it's a bug, which is
that's okay. The whole thing is designed just to kind of get your angle. Yeah. It's really, this whole thing is just us sitting down and talking.
Then there would be coffee or adult beverages. So,
I should do that. Yeah. I should know my audience or my guests and just bring in alcohol.
No coffee.
Or water.
I'm driving.
Oh, you're driving?
Yeah.
Okay, coffee. Yeah. See, I'm not a coffee drinker though.
Oh, how do you?
I know. Don't hate me.
I'll try not to.
Yeah, no, I always get that, it's like, actually there was this one time I was at work and, I wasn't irritated. I just came to work but slowly things started to kind of nitpick and I go to my post because, I wasn't in charge back then and I find that the person I'm relieving is not there. And so I track the person down and I'm like, okay, I need keys and radio and all that kind of stuff. And he just wasn't giving it up. And it's like, okay, you're off shift. And then of course a radio, call comes over and he's like, hold on. I'm like, just give me the freaking radio. And so he gives over stuff and he turns to one of my coworkers and he's like, God, he's in a mood. I think he needs some coffee. And Yurik is like, he doesn't drink coffee. And the look on his face is like, oh. Yeah. Is he always like that? But yeah, I always get that look when it's like, I'm not a coffee drinker. I drink tea.
Mm-hmm. That's worse.
I drink tea.
Yeah.
But
it's like coffee without willingness to commit.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Is it because of the bitterness? Because I love the smell of coffee. The smell of coffee is intoxicating, but it's the taste. It's just not bitter, and I don't like putting a lot of additives in my stuff.
Yeah, no, I was raised in ranch country. It was just, something from the time you were a kid. If there's not coffee on, then you're not a good host. If you don't offer it to everybody, you aren't a good person. If you don't accept it, then you're standoffish.
Okay.
And it just so tied into the culture back there.
Interesting.
There would be a pot on, and literally on a wood stove, there would be a pot on 24/7. And I didn't actually find out the difference between burnt coffee and strong coffee until I was in college. I thought I made coffee really good, and no, I just burned the crap out of it.
Okay. Yeah, see, I wouldn't know the difference.
I had to learn.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, you're an author.
Mm-hmm.
You're a martial artist.
Yeah. Sort of. Yeah.
Kind of doing Miller Dough.
It's the Princess Bride, more pursue than study lately.
Okay.
Systems aren't intriguing anymore.
Yeah.
They seem like a whole bunch of baggage wrapped around a few things that are really, really important. So I've been digging into the principles more.
Yeah. And I think that's really where it lays is in principles.
Yeah, it has to go. Otherwise, people are just memorizing stuff and passing it down, and you'll never. I go in rants when I do this. That means I'm trying to put stuff into human words.
Yeah.
You can pass on knowledge, but actually passing on anything effective, knowledge is enough. You have to have understanding, and to understand it, you have to experience it. And that's not, you need to get in a million fights. Someone needs to be able to explain, and you have to feel why the physics work this way, but fail that way.
Right.
So know what's right, but also know what's wrong, and be able to create an experience for the student to feel it. So within this, there's only a handful of things you can break down almost all takedowns into probably 4 hours of information, including practice, and get people, if they aren't afraid to fall, get them competent very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But that comes from really knowing what you're actually doing, not a bunch of memorized things that you hope over several years will somehow internalize to what's underlying all of them. Mm-hmm. And that's what you need to improvise under pressure. And I realized I probably just said about 9 things that aren't super connected, but it's tip of the iceberg stuff. There's a lot
right
under that.
Well, I was always impressed with your locking
Mm-hmm.
theory,
Mm-hmm.
that just knowing the 3 joints and how they work, you can pretty much teach anybody in just a couple of hours how
Mm-hmm.
to do locking, instead of teaching like center lock or chicken wing
Yeah.
or standing center, all that kind of stuff. That it's just, as long as you know how those 3 joints work, which I started incorporating into my training with the hospital, because it's, these guys don't want to, if they're not already training in art, then they don't. But it's like, okay, if we need to go hands-on, it turns into a real fight. We need to learn how to manipulate the body to, for our advantage without really hurting somebody. But it's, but if you're not already studying for, 20 plus years, then the basics count.
Yeah, we get the same thing at the academy. They teach an 8-step takedown to wrist lock to handcuff. Mm-hmm. And unless it goes perfectly, it doesn't work. And when you're working off memorization, once you go off the map, you don't know what to do.
Right.
If you got the principles down, nothing really changes. If you want to go like deep on takedowns, the thing that underlies everything else is you have a center of gravity at a base. You need to get the center of gravity out of the base, or the base out from under the center of gravity. And there's only a handful of ways to do that.
Right.
Once you look at it like that, break down the handful of ways, and then I think the most important thing is to have people play with it, so they're experimenting, improvising from the beginning, instead of having improvisation be an advanced technique. It's what humans are good at. Mm-hmm. So start them playing, and they'll invent shit you never saw before.
Yeah, you mentioned the playing. I love that concept, and I think I don't remember using that term until I started following you, or at least having you here in the dojo, just because that's how people learn, is by playing, instead of it's like, okay, well, work on these techniques. It's like, okay, just play, have fun with it, if just, and have them figure it out for themselves. I found that students pick up on that stuff, or pick up on techniques quicker than, just forcing it, I guess you could say.
It's forcing it. It's also, there's a whole bunch that we teach really, really wrong.
Yeah.
Right. Most martial artists try to teach a kinesthetic skill. They try to teach a touch skill and judge it visually, whether it looked like it would work. You need to latch onto bodies. I ran into a Tai Chi player who had awesome body mechanics, but had never actually played with another body. So her body mechanics were there, but she didn't know where to put them in the right direction to actually affect another person. So she was doing these incredibly robust techniques in a direction that they wouldn't work. And it was just that loss of context. It was always meant to be applied on another body. Put it in context, and suddenly her stuff made more sense, not less. And you find that with a lot of traditional arts. When you put them in their context, when you quit trying to do karate as a long-range fighting system, make a close-in fighting system, suddenly it makes more sense, not less. And that goes for so many things. We measure them wrong. Mm-hmm. We try to be super precise instead of respecting the slop, because nothing is precise when it gets really crappy. Occasionally you get that one sniper shot. The opening's in the right place, and you hit it just right. But counting on that, if you're waiting for it, you're going to be taking a shit ton of damage. And getting people comfortable and playing is the only way I know to actually get any kind of taste of chaos, or to get good at anything that you need to improvise. You can't. I think I've said this before, but one of my students, or one of the guys that attended my seminar, sent me a book. He goes, "This guy is teaching just like you," and it was a book on teaching improvisational acting.
Wow.
And
Okay.
It was maybe the best book I've ever seen on teaching self-defense. Because it's, the thing that got through was, acting is like martial arts, but fighting is like improv.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's a cool concept. And that does fit.
Yeah. And he had some things, the things that ruin a scene are trying to be clever, trying to think what you're supposed to do. All the stuff that's too in your head.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to stop the action is a big one that most people don't see. So improv, they'd never say no, say yes and.
Okay.
It's one of those things when someone's bigger than you is trying to hit you, you aren't going to stop it. You need to misdirect it. So the smaller and weaker you're going to fight, the more important it is to keep the action going and to quit trying to be the engine of the brake and be the steering wheel, and you have a chance.
Right.
And that was all in this book on improvisational acting coaching. It's like,
that's really cool.
Very cool. Most of the stuff I think that is really fascinating me now is coming from far outside the field.
Mm-hmm.
It's hostage negotiation stuff. I'm getting back into that and reading more since I can't do it for real anymore. But a lot of it applies.
Right on.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. Yeah. Actually, if I don't know if do you remember the title? I don't know if you want to say it here, but if you find the title of that, I'd like to
that
put
book
it in. Yeah.
Was Impro by Keith John Stone.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll try and find that link on Amazon and put it in the comments, because that sounds cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So this violence dynamics program that you have put together with.
Yeah, I should have wore that T-shirt.
Which one?
The Biodye T-shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to be out and about today, so nothing with any kind of nothing about violence or hurting people on any of those visible shirts.
Yeah, well, that one shirt
Yeah.
that I made for you, that was I know how to make ghosts. I wore that.
That
somewhere.
gets a lot of attention.
It does.
Yeah.
I think I was at a grocery store, and the woman just kind of looks at me. She's like, "Does that mean you know how to kill people?" Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. It's Maya Soderholm has her Students of Chaos T-shirts, which is a Student of Chaos and then a ring of different Filipino blades.
Okay.
And I thought I must look really good in it because everyone was checking out my chest. And no, it was just they were trying, what are those swords? Those look a little weird.
So tell me about that, the violence dynamics. How did that come into being? I mean, that's because I know you're working with other people on that.
Yeah, Casey Kikaisen is a martial arts nerd.
Okay.
Also a comic book nerd, which comes back into the story later.
Okay.
Martial arts nerd, comic book nerd. He's a probably shouldn't be tapping on the table when you're recording. Yeah. He's a SWAT team leader, sniper, training coordinator. I'm not sure he's still doing the training coordinator thing.
Okay.
For a unified group in Minnesota. So a small number of different agencies put together a team. He wanted, again, martial arts nerd to the nth. He wanted to get a couple of his favorite authors together, which were me and Mark McKeown at the time.
Okay.
To do a seminar. So we wound up doing this ridiculously long 9-day, basically just an excuse for us to get together and hang out.
Right.
And it became an annual thing, and it's an excuse for us to get together and hang out. It's evolved over time. It's become a lot more, I'm going to say sophisticated.
Okay.
One of the things with something we share in our background is the way we after action. And this is after action debriefings, when they're properly done, are super powerful tools for continuous improvement.
Right.
So we were after actioning every class and every day of classes, finding how the classes fit together, changing the order, changing the wording in this one to make something that's going to happen 2 days later.
Okay.
Have more impact. But it's some of the most conscious programming I've ever seen, or created or whatever. But it just became a team thing, and started with the three of us, and some more people are coming on board. But it's turned into probably the best basic introduction to the core skills. It's the soft skills, the hands-on skills, safe and targeted, not a lot of the people in the industry they think they're teaching, they're actually doing selection. If you make your class so tough that only tough people drop out, you never actually help anyone that needs this stuff.
Right.
But you can have a really strong stable of fighters. This one, we're working on the human engineering of taking people that are victim profiles, people that you would pick out in a crowd and say, that's the easy one, and turning them into little bundles of surprise pain.
Cool.
And I'm really proud of that. It's a really good group. And we've started doing traveling shows now. We've now been in 3 other countries, so going international.
Cool.
Yeah.
Every time I try and figure out time to get together with you, I always go onto your calendar. It's like, okay, well, this month is shot and this month is shot. So when you sent me a text the other day, I was like, oh, he's in town. This is awesome.
Well, I'm going through the old text. I found the old text from you. It's like, oh God, I never answered that. I'm such an asshole. Yeah. So May is the best time this year, because I held it for 2 contracts that didn't come through.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a little.
Yeah, no, I can understand that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, shameless plug. I got Mark Klein coming out May 4th.
Cool.
He's going to be in Oregon City, so you're more than welcome to
Cool.
to come down and play with us if you want.
Mark's fun to poke at and get him just talking, because he just goes off. And I shouldn't say that. He's probably listening to this, but it's really fun.
Yeah.
I'm not. Yeah, I have to quit using people as toys, but it's my wife has been trying to domesticate me for 30 years, and I thought she was probably the best person for it, but now I realize she's 30 years and I've only gotten this far. She's probably not actually that good at it.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of hard to change some people. So, I mean, my wife sometimes has to tell me not to say certain things. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah.
But I think I do it. I say a lot of things on purpose. I mean, it's not just random stuff that comes out of my mouth. I say it for a reason.
And it's a lot of it is. Have we talked about the third way?
I don't know. I don't think we've ever.
Oh, hey, I invented a religion.
Oh, okay. Oh, really?
Yeah.
The third way.
The third way.
Okay.
So, as a disciple of the third way, if you think about the moral history of all human beings, has been, it's not between right and wrong.
Okay.
It's always been between doing the right thing and doing the easy thing.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very few people are actively evil. They're just lazy.
Right.
There are some, but whatever. So doing the right thing takes effort. The third way is, well, why don't we do the funny thing?
Oh.
See, it increases the laughter in the world, makes everyone happier. So it actually is good. You just have to squint a little bit to see the goodness in it.
The third way.
Yeah.
Interesting. So. I'm not. I'm a spiritual person, but not a religious person. Mm-hmm. But I could get behind the third way.
Right.
I think I've been a practicer. Been practicing that for a long time.
More people than you know. All it takes to be an official disciple of the third way is to just be one.
Yeah. Interesting. That's pretty funny. Yeah. No, I find that I say things on purpose in front of my kids because I figure if they can deal with me and my outlandishness, then they will be just fine in society and won't. It's like somebody could say something purely offensive and they'd be like, oh yeah, no, my dad said so much worse.
I wanted my kids to argue. I wanted them to, I would say outrageous stuff.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want them ever thinking, the minute a kid's born, you're like the ultimate authority figure. And they assume you're infallible. And I wanted them to know right off that no, I'm fallible as anybody else. And they had every right, if they thought I messed up, to call me on it. Mm-hmm. I wanted them to be strong enough. And side effect, neither of them have, I'm not going to say they don't have respect for authority, but they don't have this automatic, if you're in charge of me, you're smart. Or if you're in charge of me, you're good intentioned. It's if you're in charge of me, that's your job description. And that's all it is to them. And
interesting.
I don't know if that's going to really bite them on the ass as they get older, but right now I'm really liking it.
Well, I mean, if you can see that they're turning into good humans, I mean,
they are.
I think that's, and that was kind of my fear. My eldest is 22. I finally moved out of the house last year, it was last year, last August. And so it's, he's making he's actually making it on his own and he's making good decisions. And it's like, okay, maybe I actually was a pretty good parent.
I can't take credit. Mine are out in the world, but it's like, that's probably despite of me, not because of me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my wife has always been one of those type of people that kind of, she likes to hold on, where, even my wife and I are the same age, but even our age group, including you, we were running and, playing in the streets and just, oh, it's getting dark, I should probably come home, that type of stuff. Yeah. But, and even since we live in this neighborhood, it's never been a bad neighborhood. We actually was like, oh, there's lots of kids here. This, even the first Halloween in this neighborhood, I saw the neighborhood just explode. I'm like, wow, this is kind of like it was when I was younger. And it's always been very kid friendly and safe. But my wife is just like, it's like, no, you can't go out. No, you can't go out. And not that we were trying to hold our son back, but it was one of those, it's like, okay, he wants to be a professional gamer. And at first I laughed. Yeah. I see.
Which is a thing, I guess.
But it's a thing. I did some investigating. It's like some of these top guys are making tens of millions of dollars a year. And I was like, okay, well, if you can make maybe 75 to 80, because as he gets older, that's just going to be the norm. But if you can make, around that, so you can support yourself and a family, go ahead, And so it's like, okay, and he wasn't a college person, I went to college, but I wasn't really a college person. So it's like, hey, if you know that, then we're not going to waste our money. You're not going to waste your money. And he wants to focus. So it's like, okay, well, if you want to stay here, pay a little bit of rent and just kind of, do savings, do your training, that's fine with us. And then, and then eventually he's like, okay, I think it's time for me to move out. And we were like, okay, cool. And I figure that's kind of, I don't know, kind of allowing them to take those first steps on their own. Cause even growing up, I was like, yeah, you're 18, you're out, but it's like, nah.
A couple questions before we circle back. Is he making it work? Is that how he's making a living, paying his rent?
He's not to that point yet, but he goes to tournaments all the time. So he and his girlfriend just went up to BC to compete in a tournament up there, Vancouver, BC. I can't remember how well he did. He didn't come up on top. So he's, but he's not the worst player out there, but he tries. So
it's a competition thing or a coaching thing as the professionals?
This
is fascinating to me.
Yeah. So I don't know a lot about it, but I do know. So there are competitions, and you go and you compete around these different people. There's a cash prize at the end. We actually held a mini tournament here several years ago where we had all of our TVs and extra stuff just accumulated or occupied with games. And he kind of there was like a pool play, and then there was bracket play, just like any type of sport. And then the money that he took at the door, the winner got.
That's
so
fascinating.
Yeah. And so that's kind of how he ran his tournament here. So it's just one of those that it's like, okay. So, and then of course, if you're big name, you've got companies who sponsor you, just like, any other big name sports guy, or say even like a NASCAR driver, So yeah, it's an interesting industry that honestly, when we were younger and video games were cool, but they weren't like, oh yeah, I could totally play this for a living. That's a thing now. And I never even, I know I'm younger than you are, but even when I was, and we're not really that far off, but still, when I was in high school, I'm not really a video game player, but I never thought that would ever get into
be a sport,
like an esport. And I think that I don't know what news channel it was, but there was a news channel that actually reported that there's a couple high schools now somewhere in the United States, don't know exactly where, that they actually have eSports as part of their sports program.
And I'm flashing back to splitting wood and moving irrigation pipe.
Yeah, it's just like
Wow.
So, I mean, I don't know if that's a good thing, but it's a thing, and it's I don't know.
Yeah, don't think the good and bad of most societal stuff you can figure out in the first like 9 generations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but he has fun with it. He has, he's got a bunch of buddies. He's made lots of friends. So I think one of the first tournaments that he went to outside of our area, he went up to Seattle and he was really excited because he got to meet some of his favorite gamers, and I saw it no different than going to a seminar and training with, some top grandmaster and getting your photo with him and getting to talk to him and all that kind of stuff. I was like, oh, that's okay.
Realistically, sword fighting is just as much fantasy as that is. So
yeah,
who are we to judge?
Yeah. So, and then of course, with the kids, I got my second one. My second one, he got it accepted to UW, and so we're moving on that. So he's wanted to get out. So he's wanted to get out since day one.
Cool.
So, and then our youngest one, she's going to be the troublemaker, I think.
That happens a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of fun.
Yeah. I figured, okay, actually when she went into, she's a 7th grader now. When she went into middle school last year, that summer before, I asked my wife, I said, so did you have the boys talk with her? And she's like, no, I had the catty little bitches talk with her. I said, okay. So I sat down.
Just as important.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
And so I sat down with her and I was like, and I told her that, and I said, you're getting older, you're maturing, guys are, dirty little scoundrels. I know, cause I was one. And, I said, so, them touching you inappropriately, snapping your bra. He just kind of went through this whole list. I said, that's not okay. And I said, you have my permission to put them on the ground, but you have to give them a warning first. As long as there's a warning. And I said, and I don't care what warning that is. You can be completely articulate and, have this this Shakespearean monologue, or you can just be like, don't fucking touch me. I said, but they do it again. I was like, and we end up at the principal's office, I will back you 100%. So, and hey, we're almost through year 2. We haven't ended up in the principal's office yet, but
good.
I don't know. I foresee.
No, I had to tell my kids that, because that was about when they started the 0 tolerance policy.
Yeah.
I said, don't start anything, but no one has the right to put hands on you.
Yeah.
If they touch you, put them down. You'll get in trouble with the school. You will not get in trouble with me.
Yeah. And that's, it's like, I'll back you 100%. Yeah. And, I've had students that have, they've been bullied and they finally fight back and they get in trouble. And I tell the parents, it's like, look, I believe they have a right to fight back, and you need to support this.
It's a fundamental, internationally recognized human right.
Yeah. And so I've had students end up in the principal's office and cause I told them it's a reality. I said, first avoidance, but if you can't avoid, you have to end the fight. And so, I had one parent that was like, oh yeah, the school called me, we got in a fight. And after, their little investigation, it was that, he was in the right, but he was still in trouble because he fought back. But she's like, no, I stood by him. And just like this thing, I don't know if you saw in the news, there was this gal up in Alaska, boys go into the girls' restroom to protest a transgender person taking a picture in the boys' bathroom. So they go in the girls' bathroom, and the story kind of, depending on what news article you read, stories conflict, but it was first reported that they would not let the girls out of the bathroom. And so girl knees the kid in the balls and she gets in trouble and expelled. But yeah. And the parents are like, yeah, no, we totally support her decision.
As they should.
As they should.
Yeah.
It's like boys were where they shouldn't be. And if they truly were blocking her in, regardless of the protest or not, she was defending herself. So, and I support that.
Yes.
So, I don't know. I think the zero tolerance policies in the schools are crap anyway.
If you think about it, zero tolerance policies are brilliant, because if you punish people for reporting it, it doesn't get reported, and you can honestly say it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
If as a bureaucratic way to look like you're doing a good job without protecting anybody, it's for an ass covering careerist, it's a brilliant strategy. For anyone that actually gives a shit about the kids, it's horrendous.
Yeah. No, I would agree with both points.
Yeah. So let's see, we're edging onto the stuff I'm not supposed to rant about in public. So because I've got long ass rants.
Okay.
Yeah.
So so your first book, Meditations on Violence.
Yeah.
I can't remember when that came out. When did you write that?
2008.
2008. Okay. And your second book, Facing, when was that?
Don't remember exactly. I think it was 2 years later.
Yeah, it was a couple years later.
Yeah.
So I think it was Facing Violence that I first started hearing your name, because Steve Perry, one of my favorite writers, he says he's going to be on.
He will be fun, and he is very outspoken on a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
I can give you a list of his buttons if you want.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, we're friends on Facebook.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so
I know a lot of his buttons already.
Yeah.
So, but I was reading his blog, and he had talked about that you had a new book out and had referenced the meditations, and so I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So I got into that, and meditations. I read that first because I'm one of those people that I have to chronological order,
Okay.
Even though you could probably read the two out of order, but for me, I just wanted to, So I read that one, and for me, it wasn't I want to say eye opener, but it was more one of those where it's like, oh my gosh, this person sees things the same way that I do. And then of course I read Facing Violence, which is it conquers some of the same stuff in meditations, but more fine tunes.
I'm trying to be more practical.
Yeah, and which after reading that, I put it down. I was like, okay, this is a required read for my students.
This is my happy finger dance. So
Yeah.
Cammie says I don't show enough expression on my face, so she taught me to do something so she'd know when I was happy.
But and I remember because I wasn't sure. I think your bio said you lived in the Pacific Northwest, and I was like, okay, well he's a local, but not knowing exactly where you were.
Not 15 miles away local. You didn't know
Yeah,
that.
no,
Yeah.
I didn't know you were. Well, when
Yeah.
when we finally talked, and you're like, yeah, when you get your dojo all set up, I'm a stone throw away. I'm literally in your backyard. I was like,
No.
Really?
Not literally. He meant figuratively.
Yeah, figuratively. But so when Trent had that seminar that your name came up, I was like, sweet. So
And Trent is fun too. I haven't played with him in about a year.
yeah, I've been talking with him. He's Trent's super busy with his business.
Yeah.
Because he's doing the whole Castaway jewelry thing.
Oh, nice.
But he wants to come on too. It's just finding the time. Because I like Trent. Trent's a great guy.
Trent is fun to play with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, I got him to tell me when, what time slot you were teaching, and that's when I came in and I was like, ooh, I get to meet Rory Miller. And now we're just kind of, I'm just kind of stalkerish,
Yeah.
So I think I don't know how I kind of phrase that. When I tell people, it's like, oh, you know Rory Miller? I said, well, yeah. I said, we're not BFFs, we're friendly, and I said, we check in with each other about every 6 to 9 months.
Yeah,
and,
not often enough.
And
not social, so
yeah, and so I said, I said, I think I originally told you that I said, I want to be your friend, and that's okay if you're kind of off on that, but I'll check in with you enough, but not enough to be a stalker.
Cool.
Something like that. But
I have to circle back on that one and back to Viodai. We have one student who she went to her first Viodai and she's been to everyone since then. Mm-hmm. And she's now wearing a t-shirt with #not a stalker. And her line is, "It's not stalking if I'm paying you."
That's awesome.
It's awesome. She's a really cool kid.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, I tell the story a lot. I don't know if I've told the story on camera though, but when we were at Trent's thing, I know that you had wanted to get coffee, and I was like, well, I wanted to talk to you. So, you and I were talking. We found a coffee place a couple blocks down the street, and two of my students were there. And I remember, you got coffee and you offered me some. I was like, no, I'm not a coffee drinker. And then you turn around and you're like, well, what about you guys? It's like, oh, no, we're just here. And you're just like, okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I thought that was
Yeah.
that funny, awkward meeting, because I know they had already read the books. They were fans. They knew I was a fan of at least the knowledge, and actually finally getting to physically play, and then
That's the fun part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, of course, and I can't remember what year that was, but it's ever since. It's at least once or twice a year.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't seen each other for a little over a year as of today, but still, it's like getting together once a year and either doing a little seminar or dinner or something like that.
Yeah.
So
Fun.
But yeah, that's it's interesting when people are like, oh, Rory. It's like Rory's just he's just a guy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
At first, you read the book, and he's like, oh, deity. But it's like, no, he's just another human. I think
See, this is where Mish shows he knows my buttons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think you inscribe when you sign meditations, you just said just thoughts in print or something like that. It's just a collection, a collection of thoughts.
Yeah.
So
that's almost all beginning writers. The first time they want to write, they instinctively know that they're going to change over time, and so they can't write the book that they want to write.
Right.
And you just accept, this is what I thought when I wrote it. This is a moment in time. Done. Move on to the next one.
Now, have you written the book that you want to write yet? Or are you getting there?
Meditations needed to get out of my system.
Okay.
Once I threw that out, then I needed facing violence to, if I'm going to trigger that many questions in people, I needed to do some stab at some answers.
Okay.
The one that actually almost no one reads is Forced Decisions. But I wanted someone to have a book that if they hated the cops or they were super pro cop, that they could actually, it's basically an academy class on how cops are taught about force.
Okay.
So that they would, I don't mind, when I was doing the job, I worked for the public. I didn't mind them scrutinizing it, but I didn't want ignorant scrutiny.
Right.
I want people that knew the rules. Just because it makes you feel icky doesn't mean it's wrong. And if you've been raised that all violence is icky, then even necessary force looks icky.
Right.
And that's no way to try to fix the world is fixing it from trying to control your feelings. So I wanted a resource out there, but basically everyone's already made up their mind, so no one wants to read a book that might change it.
Right. And I know that book exists, but I'll admit I haven't.
Almost no one has. It's the actual first book I wrote I've never published, because every time I go back to it, it has changed so much for me, because I wanted to do principles.
Okay.
Not the principles-based instruction book, but the actual list of my principles, and digging too deep as I can. And every time I pick it up, I just continuously know more than when I wrote it. What I wrote when I started was fairly good, but not nearly as deep. Its structure has blown up for me. It's an entirely different thing now. Use of gravity, what leverage actually means for both speed and power. There's just, and every time I get back to it, it's like, oh, what about? And I also find some stuff, there's some examples. It's like, I don't even remember what that word means, because it's got all the whole Japanese martial arts trigger word. I've actually forgotten the meaning, more Japanese words than I think I know now, coming out of judo and jujitsu. So.
Right on.
Yeah.
I read, so your conflict communication, I read the first version of that. I think that
as
you
a
had
draft, I think.
Well, I don't know. I think I got it off
Maybe
of
it's the ebook,
Kindle.
yeah.
It was the
Yeah, okay.
ebook. It was the ebook.
Yeah.
And I remember when that was advertised as coming. You're saying, "Hey, I got this new book out."
Mm-hmm.
I was like, "Oh, didn't you already put this out?" It's like, no. An editor got to it, and we refined some of the ways it was written.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, no, I like
Got a fancy cover on it. And,
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that one, with me working at the hospital, I teach PMAB, the prevention and management of assaultive behavior. I think that, when it comes to conflict communication, I think that's important. Especially when you get, people who are, that come in, they're all crazed out because of, meth, or whatever, or maybe they're just behaviorally disturbed and, you get they start to escalate and just trying to talk them down.
Yeah. And anyone you can talk down, don't have to put hands on, is a better day for everybody.
Oh, absolutely.
But there's a lot of communication skills aren't codified. There's almost every de-escalation class I've ever taken worked, as long as your ego didn't get involved and you remember to use them. Some of them were collections of tricks. What I like personally about ConCom is it, in my opinion, lays out the stuff that's underneath why the tricks work, which also will tell you when you don't want to go with the regular thing.
Right.
One of the things this really come in, if you ever take a hostage survival class, they're going to tell you personalize yourself. If the person knows your name and knows you have kids, then it's harder for them to kill you.
Right.
If they're protesting over population and telling them you have 6 kids is not going to make them. So it's one of those things where the general thing, personalize yourself, but it's personalize yourself into the things you have in common with them.
Right.
Not into the differences. And same if someone wants to hurt you, they need to concentrate on the differences. Your job is to bring it back to the commonalities. So there are a lot of things like personalize yourself, which is really good advice. But if you don't understand what's happening under it, you don't know what the exception is.
Right.
And you can walk right into the problem. It's same with physical skills. If you don't understand them, if you just know them, you're going to stay on the script, and that may be the bad guy's script, not yours.
When you came in, you were looking at my lifesaver medal. In that scenario, one of the cops, I mean, they had talked about how, they've been there.
Mish is officially a hero. He even has a medal.
I don't really.
And I can make him blush.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So, but it was they did that. One of them was like, "Look, I've been where you've been," and so all this time I'm thinking, really, but I was like, no. So I the trainer in me was thinking, okay, no, I see what they're doing. I see what they're doing. But yeah, it's and I've used that tactic before too. I try and I find for me, my tactic is more honesty, and just be like, look, I'm never going to steer you wrong. You just might not like what comes out of my mouth. And I find more often than not, people trust that authenticity. Now, I have not been in the higher risk situations, never done any hostage negotiating or anything like that, but dealing with, people who are paranoid, they don't know where they are, they're not trusting of the doctors or their situation. It's like, look, I'm not going to lie to you, but you may not like what I say, but I'm going to be completely honest. I'm never, and it's, when we getting to that point, it's like, I got one lady, she was just screaming and yelling, and one of the nurses is like, oh well, I don't know, I can't remember. She was talking about her phone. They had taken her phone away, and they're just like, oh well, her phone is charging. It's like, well, why did you take her phone? It's like, oh well, she'd been calling 911 and she's on a hold and all that kind of stuff. Okay, fine, cool. And so it's like, why don't you just tell her that you took her phone because she's calling 911? It's like, don't tell her it's charging. I said she can read into that bullshit. That. Yeah.
Yeah, and once you get caught in a lie, they don't trust you.
Yeah.
And you can't work with them after that.
Yeah.
It's very hard. I would do the same thing. Keep it as honest as possible, not less for the crisis negotiation than for just the day-to-day interaction with the inmates. And sometimes the answer was, they'd ask the question, I go, do you want my honest answer? Because otherwise you just don't ask the question.
Right.
But one of the weirdest was trying to give someone to give up a weapon.
Okay.
And it's a longer story, but basically, I asked for the weapon. Fuck you. But I said, please. And he was, all right. And why that was his particular button, the whole magic word from when you're 3 or 4 years old. Matt, please and thank you are the magic words.
Yeah.
I use my magic word. It's supposed to work. All right. And he handed it over.
That's funny.
It was that whole incident was pretty funny.
Because something similar happened to me. It was this guy comes in. He wanted to fight. Mm-hmm. I had already pulled my pepper spray, and we had told the charge nurses, like, look, we're not going to fight with this guy. People are going to get hurt. Mm-hmm. We're just going to hose him and strap him down. That was the plan. Yeah. Totally against CMS regulations, but that was the plan to keep people safe. Yeah. And so, but the whole goal was to get him into scrubs. Mm-hmm. And so, I was talking to him, and I was like, look, could you just please put on the scrubs? And his entire demeanor changed. And he was like, okay. I'm like looking around, I'm like, that didn't just work.
It did. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, we've been dealing with this guy for the last 20 minutes. We're on edge. We've already planned on pepper spraying him. Mm-hmm. And it's like, please. So when I teach, it's like, never underestimate that word. Never underestimate the word please.
There's a whole bunch of we have a lot of situations where we're trying to figure out how to win the fight. We know the fight's going to happen. What do we do? How do we do the cell extraction? How do we set up entry? Yeah. And being able to step, I call it going above the game or depth of game, and look up. Go, wait, who decided that this was going to be a fight? Because if he decided it and we're playing his game, he's in charge of the situation. Right. Can I refuse to give my permission to turn it into a fight? Can I change it into something else? And a bunch of examples from that. But when, I'm fairly gruff, and this was fairly late in my career, so, gray beard, sergeant, suddenly, I just figured out you're trying to hurt my feelings. What would you do if I cried? And the guy did just exactly what you're doing now. He had no answer for that. He just started laughing. It was over. So one guy, it was turn your head to the side. It's like, because he was handcuffed. He was all tensed up, right? Right. And the cuffs were about to go up. He was looking like, just turn your head to the side. What do you mean? Well, it looks like you're going to try something we do. I'm going to slam you forward, and your face is going to hit that concrete wall in front of you. And I don't think you need those dental bills because you seem like basically a nice guy. Mm. So whenever you do whatever you're going to do, just turn your head to the side. And he just thought about it for a second. Goes, I'm not going to be any problem. It's like, thank you very much. Thank you, just like please, is something to never underestimate how powerful it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, when it comes to all of your writings, mm-hmm. When did you make that decision? Was it just like thoughts on paper that you're just like, oh, I think I'll do this?
Didn't really. And you've read Meditations. There's an essay in there about baggage. Mm-hmm. But that was all shit that happened in 1 year. And I've gone over some of my journals from that time, and that actually wasn't that intense a year. Yeah. But for whatever reason, it wasn't settling. It was the first time I was taking stuff home. The only two things in there that were, three things maybe, that were unusual was my first body recovery was search and rescue. A couple of my friends committed suicide, and we delivered a baby in reception. But other than that, that was actually a very low fight year and relatively non-intense. Mm-hmm. But for whatever reason, it wasn't settling. And so I started writing to get out of my head, not to write a book and not to publish. It was, for the first time, it was keeping me awake at night. I was thinking about it when there was no reason to think about it. Things were popping into my head. Okay. And so it was Meditations was just a big psychic vomit of, and the other thing, up until that time, one of my biggest releases was just martial arts. I would go to train and I would sweat and bleed and I would be happy. It was just one of those complete catharsis. And then I was going to train and hearing people fantasizing about shit I wish I'd never done, the stuff. And that made it really hard for me to stay in that world, to connect. And that's kind of when I quit thinking of myself as a martial artist. It just, still love the art, still love the people, but it was just, I couldn't connect anymore. It ceased to be good for me.
Okay.
So I was trying all the usual stuff I do to get stuff out of my system. Didn't want to start self-medicating, which is what everyone else does.
Right.
So I started writing, just so it would on paper, and I could poke on it on paper instead of poking on it inside my head. So that was why that first book got written. It was pure therapy, psychic vomit, whatever you want to call it.
Right on.
Yeah.
So basically, and you say that's kind of that year was when you started first taking stuff home.
Yeah.
Before that how are you keeping it at work? Was it the martial arts?
No,
or
never. Martial arts was part of it. I always had good family ties in a sense. One of my really early mentors, and two different pieces of advice from two different one was keep all of your friends that have nothing to do with this job.
Okay.
Because they're the ones living in the real world, not you.
Mm.
And the other one was cops are the only people that think that they live in the real world and everyone doesn't. You'll never see a miner that thinks that everyone lives underground. They just don't know it because they can't see. We deal with a very tiny shitty percentage of the world. And if you don't keep perspective with having other people in your life, you start to think that ugly 3% you live with is actually the whole world.
Right.
So you need that perspective. Let's see. I got a lot of good advice as a rookie.
Well,
but yeah.
Well, that's I've said this before. One of the reasons I got out of bouncing was because I started seeing the worst in people. Mm-hmm. You see these young kids, 21 to 26, mm-hmm. just, getting drunk, doing stupid stuff. And I was never really like that. I mean, I drank, but I never really went out and partied. I was usually the one who would have a couple beers and then just, I was even at my personal parties, I was still the bouncer, but just seeing humanity at its worst, I got really tired of that. And I think I find that now at the hospital, I'm starting to, even though we're in a way there to help, mm-hmm. it's still seeing, we get a lot of people in, and it's just like, just start seeing the worst and worst in people.
Yeah. It's easy to go there. Another piece of advice from one of my lieutenants, one of my kids was acting out. It was in that 2 to 4 year old stage where they're doing all their, the temper tantrums and the stealing and I'm going, oh my God, my son's turning into a criminal. And I'm trying to remember his name now, but Lieutenant goes, no, that's normal behavior for that age. Your job as a parent is to teach him not to do it. It's not that your child is turning into a criminal. Criminals never quit being that 2 to 4 year old age.
Right.
So the impulse control, and that's, a lot of criminals are sophisticated and not taking that, but it's basically, I'd mistaken something they grow out of as something they were growing into.
Mm.
So I needed the outside perspective for that, but keeping that outside perspective was important. Your original question, why I didn't take it with me? It wasn't just because of martial arts. I mean, yeah, I did keep family ties, but it just didn't resonate with me. Fighting was not something that kept me awake or danger. The one thing that did, I would have recurring dreams about whining, because that's the other thing that criminals, when they're incarcerated, do a lot.
Okay. And
I would have one dream of a long corridor with cells like every 5 steps with someone behind every door asking for something. Can I have a phone call? I'm out of toilet paper. Officer, I need a pencil. And that was the one thing I ever took home. I never took home the fighting. I took home the whining.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. And, it's interesting. you say you never took home the fighting. Is that just because you're just built that way, where it's just like, okay, whatever?
I mean, how would you know, right? I think a lot. There's some group of people that I like very much. It's are you familiar with Masters of Mayhem on?
I've heard
Facebook.
I'm not. I didn't know they were on Facebook, but I've heard that term.
They have a Facebook thing, and they've got some other stuff, and they've been doing some classes. But basically, two of the members of the core group are old school high-end criminals who reformed themselves. But when we get together and we talk, and one of the conclusions we come to is within that little circle, I think I'm the least damaged because I was always in my own head the good guy. Mm-hmm. And so they have issues with some of the stuff they did because it didn't feel righteous. It felt necessary. Okay. They were adapted for environment. I think that's one of the reasons that I didn't take home is because I didn't have any questions. Should I have done that? Should I not have done that? That was very rare. There was always debriefed, could I have done it with more finesse or with less? That was improvement. But never felt like the bad guy.
Right on. Yeah, I remember in one of the PMAP classes, one of the other master instructors was like, when talking about restraining a patient, it's like, some people have a problem with this, and I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, I've never had a problem with that, and then thinking about all the other stuff I've done. Yeah, is it just the way that is it just my mindset? It's like it might be that same thing where it's like, no, I'm doing this for the right reasons, because this patient is, we would only restrain somebody if they're physically harming themselves. Yeah. And so it's like, okay, no, we're doing this for the right reasons. This is, this is to help them out. And I don't have a problem doing that. But there's a lot of people, I call them Mormon Fuzzies because it's, they get into nursing or whatever, becoming a caregiver because they want to take care of people, but they don't see that care needing to go to that level.
I think within that, it's probably, and I'm totally Rory explaining you.
Yeah.
But when you recognize we use force to prevent something worse. Mm-hmm. If we don't restrain this person, then this is going to happen. That's the worst outcome. So we're okay with that. Yeah. When someone sees all force as equally bad, they don't have that mechanism. Right. They can't, whether they're not looking at the future knowledge of bad, when they say it's all bad, then there's no ethical way to engage at all. And if there's no ethical way to engage, the other option is to let people hurt other people. That's not ethical either. And they just get in this bind where they have no place to go and they find it really stressful. Right. Having your priorities that if I don't restrain this person now, then this damage is going to happen very, very soon. Again, that's part of being the good guy. I'm preventing way worse stuff than I'm doing. Right.
So. I like that perspective.
Seems to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how long were you in corrections?
17 years and another year working with the Iraqi Correction Service.
Okay.
So, as an advisor.
Right on.
Yeah.
And you're just time for you to get out, or what was the motivation behind that?
Getting out, there was it's never all for one reason. Mm-hmm. And it's not under an. I don't want to talk bad about any but former employers.
Okay.
But there was a.
Could you sum it up in like politics?
I'm trying to. Well, no, not really.
Okay.
Sort of. Personally, I was starting to get really complacent. I was getting bored.
Okay.
And I was taking chances I shouldn't have taken. So okay. that was definitely part of it, and that's one of the reasons why it was Iraq instead of something else. Was I thought that I needed to go into a more harsh environment in order to up my game.
Okay.
And stay engaged. but it was politics to the extent that the lieutenants and above appeared to be having a last man standing backstabbing competition to see who would take over when the big cheese who was under investigation went down. And I'll flat out say it. I was ordered to redesign the defensive tactic program so that more people got hurt.
Wow.
Literally, it was one of those. And I didn't find out about the backstabbing contest till later that was what was actually motivating it.
Right.
But I got called in the office and told because we redesigned the DT programs, the play base, the stuff I'm doing here all came from that. Mm-hmm. And we had a 3% reduction in officer injuries. And I was told that a 3% reduction couldn't happen if we were doing everything legally. And so we needed to fix that statistic.
Oh.
I go, you mean get more people hurt? That's not the intent of the order, but we need to fix that statistic. And I stomped out saying if I had a place to go to, you'd have my resignation right now. And
wow.
Got a call that night asking if I was interested in going to Iraq. So
you're like, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I don't know if I could stay in a situation like that.
I couldn't have stayed involved in training.
Yeah.
And it was just, I'd never heard anything. The only thing I'd ever heard, and it was from the same people, they wanted to change the physical skills for new hires, the physical test, because not enough people were passing. And the guy who was training sergeant at the time, I'm trying not to use any names, goes, we can't lower standards. They looked right at him and goes, we aren't lowering the standards. We're just changing the standards so that more people pass.
But that's lowering the standards.
By definition, yeah.
It's like,
yeah. So the agency had gone from one of the, in my opinion, one of the best in the world at what we did, and was imploding hard and making some really poor decisions.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I see that's kind of what's going on where I am. Where, there's politics, things are changing, and and sometimes change is good, but like for me, I got out of the training. I was a trainer for a long time. Pretty much upon hire, they wanted me as part of the PMAP program because I was already a MOAB instructor. And then shortly, a couple of years after that, I just got into the physical training, and we only really had pepper spray. But as we built it up, then the last couple of years, there's like, okay, well, let's create an academy. So, new hires come in, they get a 2-week academy, and, we started carrying tasers, so we put that as part of it. But the person in charge is, he stopped making it fun. And I teach. Teaching is in my blood. I love teaching. And I think in part because I like putting hands on people. I like getting that, not in a sadistic way of putting pain on, but I like testing out my own theories and then passing that on, educating. It's just one of those things. And so I have fun with it. And it's like, ooh, I have another class coming up. Sweet. And like the side work of preparing for the class, I was just like, oh, that's just part of it. But once it became work, and it was one of those, it's like, and then also seeing some of the people that they were hiring, and it was like, yeah, this isn't fun anymore. And so I stepped back, and I still were like, oh, you want to come back? It's like, not really, But I didn't have to deal with the politics that you did when that type of stuff. But there's so much change going on that it's just like It's like, no, I really just want to sit at a desk. Actually, really, what I want to do is I want to do this. I want to do this. Like I was when you came in, I was telling you I have so much fun. I'm just a few episodes in. I have lots of fun. So that's why I want you to subscribe and like and comment, because that gets me doing this all the time. So, and the feedback that I've gotten, I've gotten some feedback. It's like, oh, you're a really good interviewer. Great. I'm pulling this shit out of my ass. But it's really the whole idea is just to sit down and talk.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I don't know. It's one of those things. I like doing what I'm doing. In fact, actually, just a couple years into working, it was like I was having a tough time, but it was this interaction with this one guy who had lost his father. That like a year later, he came back to me. He ran into me in the halls, and he's like, "Hey, that time you helped me out with my dad." He's like, that was very impactful. He says that, you just being there really helped me through that moment. And it was at that point where I was just like, okay, so what I do is I am helping people, even if because I thought I'm just opening a door and, helping somebody do this, just doing my job, but I'm actually making an impact. And so that, and I tell people that story a lot, because it's like, it's one of those where it's like, no, that's really what kept me going, is that just doing what we do can impact people. But when it becomes real work, I don't know. That's my problem. I understand work is sometimes hard, but to really enjoy life and to enjoy your job, it has to be fun.
And that's the complacency thing. When you start dialing it in, you need to do something else.
Yeah.
Or phoning it in.
Yeah.
Yeah. You need to do something else.
So.
That is reminding me of something I'm not sure I want to say on video.
That's okay. If you don't want to say I'm not going to force you.
I'm not sure what it means, but when someone comes to you with that, it's,
yeah,
you changed my life, and you have no memory of the event, no memory of the person. It was not something that raised to the level of a blip on your radar, but someone with a different life. It's the most stressful or horrible or impactful or whatever thing that they've been through. It's when you've been there, and your life, when someone else's life-changing event doesn't even go into your long-term memory. I'm not sure what that means, but I think it's a pretty solid sign you've been at something too long. So,
well,
maybe not.
In this case, I mean, it was kind of it was mundane, but it was not out of the ordinary. Well, let's see. It was, how would I phrase that? So it was out of the ordinary. So when he said, "Oh, hey, do you remember me from last year? You helped me with my dad." I was like, "Oh yeah," because he was picking up his father, who had passed away. Usually it's a funeral service home or whatever, but he had all the papers were legit. He was picking up his dad's body, and I was helping him get it out of the morgue. That's not a call that we get a lot to help. Just so I remembered that because of that. But for me, it was just, in that moment, it was just me unlocking a door, helping the guy out, talking with him. He didn't seem distraught. It was just, okay, we're just having a conversation. But that mundane act, because when he was telling me that how it affected his life, he's like, "Look, I just lost my dad. He was one of my best friends. He and I really had this connection, and I was really hurting in that moment. But you just being there, that really helped me through." I was like, wow, my perception of that event was completely different from his perspective, but it helped. And so it's, but that was early. I think that was year 3 for me. And I've been there. I'm in my 12th year now. But, I told that story in training, because it's like, look, we're not guards. We're not watching dirt. We're officers. We deal with humans. The interactions that we have with people make a difference, even if we don't think it does. So I don't know.
Yeah. No good answers. The one that got me thinking is, had a guy, one of my last interactions in jail is, a guy came in, he's huge. He goes, "You don't remember me, do you?" It's like, no. 14 years ago, we were in a fight. And I had no memory of this. But one of the tricks I used to do, I recognized it, not the initial, but one of the tricks I used to do was holding a conversation while fighting. So we doing whatever physically we were doing as intensely as we were doing it, but I'd be saying, "Son, just relax. We're just here to get handcuffs off. Once you relax, everything's going to be fine." And the cognitive disconnect between the physical activity and the calm, slow voice got a lot of people just to surrender. It was just too weird. And it usually had the side effect of afterwards not thinking I was an enemy because I tried to give them good advice. But this guy, he said he'd gone to prison for 14 years, was coming back through the system on his way out. And so 14 years, I can pretty much guess what the charges were, because it's really hard to get that in the state that I worked. And he just said, you know, I was just a hard-headed young kid, and you were trying to give me advice the whole time. And I've been thinking about that the whole time. So I just want to say thank you. So it was impactful. Really glad I did it, but I felt so weird to have no memory of it. It's because dude was big, so I'm assuming the fight was pretty big too. No memory.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what does your future or immediate future hold next year or so?
Next year or so. Let's see. I'm just said something to the copy editor. I have all the weird issues that every writer does with the whole, you know, this is a book that's going to destroy my credibility and destroy my career. All the books suck. Everyone hates me. They only say that they like the books because they think I'm unstable and violent.
No,
I have all those voices in my head, right?
Adorably violent.
Right? Adorably violent.
Yeah.
So I had an idea last year, just kind of woke up with I don't think anyone's written an article on how to train your intuition, how to use it, access it, listen to it, but not actually how to make it better.
Okay.
And so I started writing, and in 10 days I had 30,000 words.
Holy cow.
So the book wrote itself intuitively. And I've been totally putting off copy editing it. So I finally pulled the trigger on that and sent it to the copy editor about 3 days ago.
Okay.
So when that's back, so that should theoretically be out. The other thing that has nothing to do with training, some stuff's going to come together in September, and I will no longer have to teach unless I want to. It won't be a job anymore.
Right on.
Like I said, once it turns into a job, it starts. So I'm going to be helping a friend sail a catamaran from South Africa to here.
Oh, dude.
And that should be right after the last scheduled seminar in November. Flying to South Africa, getting on a sailboat, coming back, and that will be. I'm really excited, but that's also going to be the transition change. Life after that will be totally different than the life now. Because I've got some ideas, not sure what I'm going to be doing, but it'll be a transition. I'm literally sailing off into the sunset in November.
Wow. Yeah. Now, from coming from somebody who loves being on the water, I am just thinking about that. I am so jealous right now. That would just be awesome. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's. Oh, wow.
Yeah. I'm very excited.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool that you're going to be able to do that. That's fantastic. Right on.
Yeah.
So, when's the next couple seminars coming up?
Let's see. When is it? I think the next one, I reserved May for something that fell through.
Right.
So I think the next one, early June, will be down in Berkeley.
Okay.
And that one's, I've only held it in the U.S. once before, but it's the instructor development course. It's how to actually run principles-based training. Okay. So not about teaching what I teach, but teaching what you teach better. So digging out the principles underlying your stuff, how to connect with adults. There'll be a section on how to talk to professionals so you don't come off looking. Most professionals do not like being taught by civilians for reasons. There's ways around that. Curriculum design, troubleshooting students. So the whole basic, everything I think is really important to teaching from what I understand right now.
Right on. Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah, it's a fun class, and if we get enough signups, then we'll take in the whole team, the whole Kiron team.
Right on.
So,
very cool.
Yeah.
Let's see. Look at the time. We've been going a little over an hour.
All right, perfect.
I think this would be a good stopping point.
Cool.
Okay. Well, if you've made it this long, thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Rory, for coming over. I always enjoy having you. Yeah. In my dojo. If you like the conversation, hit like. If you haven't subscribed already, subscribe. If you haven't made a comment, And if you really did like it, share this. Okay. All right. So until then, we are
Done.
out.